Good evening and welcome to the LaSalle Public Library's virtual programs. I'm Donna Blomquist, librarian here at the LaSalle Public Library, welcoming you to tonight's really wonderful program. But before we begin, let me apologize for our little delay. I guess we were on the wrong side of the digital divide today, but we have, I think, solved the problem, and thank you for staying with us. Let me just cover a few announcements of the upcoming programs on your screen. Really quickly, Father Dominic this Saturday with Valentine treats. If you like to bake or if you just like to eat, you can convince somebody else to bake Father Dominic's recipes. This is a must-see program. So please join us on Saturday, February 5th at 1 o'clock. It will be delightful. A little bit further on, February 15th at 6 p.m. on our usual Tuesday nights, we will have the amazing historian Leslie Goddard when she presents Route 66, the Mother Road. If you were an Illinois kid back when station wagons were popular, chances are that you and your family traveled down Route 66 and enjoyed some of the curious and crazy stops along the way. If you are newer to Illinois and only remember I-55, you missed something. So hopefully it can all be brought back, young or old, if you can join us for this program. So join us for Route 66, the Mother Road, February 15th at 6 p.m. And then on February 16th, we will be hosting a new rom-com author with already 6 best-selling novels. Her name is Jasmine Gilroy, and she will be here February 16th at 7 p.m. If you can join us for all of those, we would love to have you in our audience. And so without spending any more time, tonight's program showcases the Midewin National Tallgrass Prairie, a unique natural place only 64 miles from LaSalle. Our speaker tonight, and again for part 2 of this program on March 1st, is Veronica Hankey. Veronica is the site's public affairs officer and public services team leader, an individual with a remarkable understanding of the flora, fauna, history, geography, and future of this very special place. And with that, I'll switch off my screen and my microphone and welcome Veronica. Veronica, are you there?
Oh, I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, absolutely.
That's the best news I've heard all day. Great. And it's so wonderful to be here. Donna, thank you so much. And thanks to everybody for your help with the tech tonight. I feel so bad that we ran into those glitches with the issue with sound. And every once in a while, it seems like Zoom changes a few things, but it's still one of my favorite platforms. So, and it's bringing us together tonight. So it's really great. And it's amazing that we can get together tonight, thanks to the hard work of the staff at the LaSalle Public Library District. We have been working closely with Donna and the team at the LaSalle Public Library District for several years now. And mostly what we work together on is outreach to the communities about bison, interesting information about bison and how they're helping in restoring the prairie at Midewin National Tallgrass Prairie. So Donna and everyone, I just want to thank you so much for all that you do with our outreach and being such great community partners. And thanks to everyone for being here tonight. This very, weather, a night of a lot of weather concerns. I'm gonna share my screen with you all, and I'd like it if you could tell me if you can see it. Okay. Somebody could give me the thumbs up or, let's see, let me check the chat and see. Great, thanks so much for letting me know. So Midewin National Tallgrass Prairie, as Donna said, it is truly a really special place. Bill Curtis, the legendary journalist in the Chicago area, he tells the story of how a journalist came to visit him on his restored prairie in Midewin, up in the North Shore. And he said that she got out of her car and she looked at his restored prairie and said, "Is that it? It looks just like plants and just like something I would drive by on the side of the road." and Bill delighted in telling her, yes, that this is really what's interesting, is that a prairie can be very simple at a distance, can seem a little more familiar to us than we think it would be. But when you look closely, you see things like what's featured in this picture here, which was taken in an area of restored prairie. There are several areas that have been restored at Midewin National Tallgrass Prairie. The pink flowers in the foreground are purple prairie blazing star. And the round balls that you see are very iconic of the prairie. They sort of announce that the prairie is there, and it's called rattlesnake master. And we get to know these prairie plants. People get to know these prairie plants as they become acclimated with learning about the prairie. And I always liken it to learning about Renaissance art or Impressionist art. The more you learn about these little details, the more you love it. And you want to come out to Midewin National Tallgrass Prairie again and again. You could look at this and just say, well, that's a beautiful picture. But when you know what those actual plants are, they're pretty special. There was once so much prairie in Illinois. The prairie became known as the Prairie State. Now less than 0.01 of a percent, 1% remains. And why is that so significant? Well, it's because of the pollinators, the grassland birds, and all of the different species that help us as human beings survive and thrive. The US Department of Agriculture estimates that 1 in every 3 bites of food that we eat is dependent on monarchs and other pollinators, those types of species. And someone told me this summer, he lives out in Virginia, and he said, Veronica, I only saw 1 monarch butterfly this entire summer. And I share that with you so that it kind of gives you context of what are we seeing across the country in terms of pollinators really struggling to maintain the numbers they were at, like when I was a kid. I didn't think anything of it at all, that there were monarch butterflies all over when I was a kid growing up in Wisconsin. But now they're much more few and far between. So we are very privileged, and we have a really important task to. I want to. Let's see here. I need to make sure I can move my slide. Does everyone see a bright green slide with just white words on it? I want to make sure they're advancing. Okay, it didn't seem to advance earlier. Let's see. Okay, thanks, Donna. So we're very fortunate to have a wide open space of 18,225 acres of public land. It's your land. This equates to approximately 63 of Chicago's Grant Park and 23 of New York's Central Park. So it's pretty amazing to have this so close to the Chicago area, close to LaSalle, however you define close. Maybe you think that's kind of far away, but it's pretty amazing. Now it's 18,225 acres. To give you a little context of what that is, this is the amount of acreage that has been transferred so far through the Illinois Land Conservation Act, which was enacted in 1996. We're celebrating our 26th year next week. And the Illinois Land Conservation Act, I'll tell you a little bit more about it in a few minutes, but through it, land is being transferred in increments from the Department of Defense to the USDA Forest Service. And can you write in the chat box if you know what that land was utilized for? What is the historical significance of that land that's being transferred? There are 2 answers to this. The land has been used over the years for 2 very significant purposes before it became a prairie. Thank you, Rebecca. And the Joliet Arsenal, it is. That's number 1. Now, can anybody think a little further back to before the Joliet Arsenal and tell us the second use of the land before the Joliet Arsenal? What was there before the Joliet Arsenal? All right, well, I will tell you, it was farmland and hundreds of farms on this area where we are now. So a lot of really interesting history. You can take a historical self-guided interpretive tour of the old farmsteads and see where the farms were located and have an immersive experience. We have farm displays in several community centers with handouts with recipes from one of the families that farmed the land years ago, the Schumacher family. There's more about that on our homepage of our website. You'll be able to see a story about the Schumacher family and a recent picture, and they're just a very important part of the history of the land. So Midewin National Tallgrass Prairie is located about an hour or so southwest, which depending on traffic, from Chicago, and it's on the Illinois Route 66 Scenic Byway. If you go down to Midewin National Tallgrass Prairie, 10 minutes south, you'll see one of the old rocket men, the big statues that stood on the side of Route 66 in the 1950s and all across the country, actually, not just on Route 66, but he's called the Gemini Giant, and he has a big rocket that he's holding, and it's really neat. The Illinois travel and tourism organizations like to give a shout out about that because it's a really neat thing to see, to come and take a picture with. So if you visit, definitely come and look for the Rocket Man. So the name, a lot of people ask about what is the name. First of all, it's pronounced Midewin, Midewin. And it was a name that was determined by some of the early founders that wanted to, there was a real strong grassroots community effort to establish Midewin back in the 90s. And the name that they chose was based on a Potawatomi medicine society that the word has to do with healing and balance. They wanted to choose that word. They chose that word because it addressed the healing and balance that's happening with the land. So as I mentioned, last year we celebrated our silver anniversary, 25 years of prairie restoration, and also 3 other basic objectives of the Illinois Land Conservation Act. There were 4 purposes introduced in 1986. Not just restoration of the prairie to bring the prairie back, but also recreation and agriculture. There are cows at Midewin National Tallgrass Prairie. We have permittees who bring their cattle to graze, and they're actually helping with restoration by their grazing and so forth. There are also row crops. Another purpose is the education and research, and that's what we're doing tonight, talking about, we're learning about the prairie. So at one time, there were over 400 of these bunkers, like you see on the right side of the photograph here. This is a picture of a radio show that we hosted at the bunker on the Group 63 Trail in 2018. And we hosted the Mike Novak radio show out there. We like to have fun and encourage people to go in and take their picture inside the bunker. These bunkers are not all going to be able to stay as restoration continues, because we want to make way for the land to be completely healed, and we'll put more prairie plants into where these bunkers were. Volunteers, partners, and staff are working with over 275 different species of native Illinois prairie plants. There are also, in addition to the bunkers, there are miles of roads and railroad tracks, buildings, and infrastructure. And part of the restoration process is the bison. There's a herd of bison. They're a 20-year experiment that began in 2015. They were introduced. And we're monitoring to see if they're grazing, which helps create a more varied a variety of grasslands, grass lengths, excuse me, is going to help encourage the return of native prairie species, including insects. One of the things that we saw last winter, there was a huge number of owls that came over the bison pasture because they were attracted to the voles that they could see on the ground, where the bison graze, and they could feed off of them. So they were for some reason that one winter they were really coming in great numbers, and those are the kinds of things we want to see. Short-eared owls are grassland birds, and we're tracking to see if we're seeing more species like the short-eared owl and more come back around. Northern harriers are another grassland bird, and they were showing up in great numbers last year too. There is a bison cam. You can look at the bison webcam through the Midewin National Tallgrass Prairie website on the homepage, and you won't always see them. I have a disclaimer there that you won't always see them, but we try to announce on Facebook when we see them and Twitter to let people know, look now and you will be able to see them. They graze over 1,000 acres. So we always try to encourage that people know you might not get to see them. There's an area to look for them. And, a lot of times people do see them, but it's never a guarantee. So I mentioned about the 275 species of native Illinois prairie plants. We work through a partnership agreement with the Nature Conservancy in Illinois to manage that volunteer program. We manage it in a partnership program. There are actually 2 staff members with the Nature Conservancy that are physically co-located with us in our office. I mentioned that there is restored prairie at Midewin National Tallgrass Prairie. There sure is. Here's a nice photo of it. You see some echinacea there, the pink flowers. It's pale coneflower, and there's other plants there as well. And this is in the Prairie Glacial Plains. This picture was taken on Sand Ridge several years ago, and the Prairie Glacial Plains is one of the active restoration sites right now, where there's a real concentrated effort to focus on restoring that land. That's where volunteers go out on volunteer work days and really focus their efforts on those areas. At the top there on the right side of my list, you see South Patrol Road Prairie. And that prairie is a great example of what prairie might have looked like. We don't know for sure because there weren't cameras, at the time that we're talking about over 150 years ago when prairie was ubiquitous in the prairie state. But we think we have a pretty good idea that this is a pretty good example, the South Patrol Road Prairie. And we work on these projects with partners like the Nature Conservancy, like I mentioned, Open Lands based in Chicago, the Wetlands Initiative. Tomorrow night, we have a program with Anna Brown, an ecologist with the Wetlands Initiative. She's going to talk about the Prairie Glacial Plains specifically and how you can plant in an area where if you have a wetland area in your yard, or if you want to establish a prairie garden. There are so many plants to think of for that. The National Forest Foundation, all of these groups come together and make these restoration areas what they are, and they require a lot of maintenance. On the east side of Highway 53, which is Old Route 66, we have the Iron Bridge Prairie, and it's named after an iron bridge that's right there along the prairie, crosses Highway 53, and it connects the east and west sides of Midewin. And that prairie is just so beautiful, especially at the peak of summer. And it's probably the most popular place. So I would say if you're going to come out, there's plenty of parking there. Come on out and you can start from there to set out along the Henslow Trail to look for bison. And then if you go in the other direction, you can go inside an open bunker. So make a note of that, the Iron Bridge Prairie, Iron Bridge Trailhead. So One of the really neat things that people are surprised to hear about is that there are seed production gardens at Midewin National Tallgrass Prairie. There are 3 of them. One of them is at the supervisor's office on Route 66, and another one is on River Road, right before, well, kind of midway between Highway 53 and the Interstate 55. And it's on the north side of River Road. You drive in about a half a mile, and this is where this crew here in this picture is standing, and it's vast. You can see the rows go way in the back there. So it goes on for miles. It's pretty amazing. Seed is grown in these gardens to be replanted at Midewin National Tallgrass Prairie. It really takes a lot of creativity to do something like what we're doing economically and efficiently. So the seed production gardens are pretty significant. So I mentioned there's a lot of restoration happening. If you haven't caught on to that yet, there's a lot of restoration happening, and it happens year round. This is a pail of seed that's been harvested, and all of the stuff with it is called chaff, CHAFF. And throughout the winter months, volunteers and staff and partners clean this. They separate the seed from the chaff, like you see volunteer Sally Weeclaw doing here. Sometimes they use a handheld shaker, and other times they use a machine. And these pictures were taken before the pandemic, so they would have had everyone would have had a mask on working indoors like this. So you can see, the seed goes into the machine, and the chaff is separated, and later on it's taken out to the prairie, and this is prime time of year to do seed broadcasting. I don't know if you all knew that, but if you're restoring prairie anywhere, this is the time to do it. Winter is a great time to do seed broadcasting like what you see this volunteer doing here, because the snow helps to keep the seed covered so that it can get a chance to catch hold in the ground. Here's a picture of some of the seeds, and when they're separated and they're placed in bags like these, that's a way of sorting them so that we can keep them straight and know where they should go, or get them in the right place. Other activities happen year-round as well. This crew is out clearing brush of, these are non-native invasive species and some invasive species, or some native invasive species, sorry. And they're a very highly trained group of people. They know how to work with herbicides, and they know what to pull and what not to pull, and they've been doing it for many years. This group, most of these folks here, have been going out on Fridays, every Friday since the beginning of December, to do this activity over on the west side, right near the River Road seed beds, in that vicinity, in the restoration area there, where they are hoping to try to maintain to keep the growth back. They're pulling things like Osage orange. I don't know if you ever see those big round green fruits that are in the trees. You can see them in the fall, and then they start to tumble to the ground, and they kind of have the little squigglies all around. Their Osage oranges. A lot of those types of trees need to come down to keep the area clear so that native prairie species can grow in there. Prairie plants. Osage orange is all over Midewin National Tallgrass Prairie because of that rich farm legacy. Farmers used to plant it to keep their cows in a bordered area, so the cows would know where the border and boundaries are for each grazing area. So lots of interesting things like that. There are over 172 species of birds. There's a new bird booklet out that the Nature Conservancy just created, and it's got all all sorts of different birds that you might see at Midewin National Tallgrass Prairie. It's the Nature Conservancy just came out with that and announced it this week. 1,000 insect species, 570 vascular plant species, and 53 fish species, 27 mammals, 15 reptiles, and 22 miles of stream run through the prairie. There's a very active stream monitoring program. Volunteers and staff work with the Illinois Stream Network, and they monitor to see, they can tell how the health of the water by looking at water samples under a microscope. And if they see certain species of microbials, they know that the water is healthier. So recreation, 34 miles of trails, non-motorized, which is really nice if you want, that peace and quiet and knowing no one's going to come up behind you on an ATV or whatnot. But they might come up behind you on a bike, because there's biking, there's cross-country skiing. We might be able to cross-country ski later this week. There's hunting through the Illinois Department of Natural Resources. You can hunt for turkeys and all sorts of different things. There's horseback riding. If you bring your own horse, you could trailer it in. Most people bring their horses to the Iron Bridge Trailhead. And trails are open every day from 4 a.m. to 10 p.m. Also open now is we have a vestibule that's open in our Welcome Center area, which has been closed since the pandemic. But we opened up our entryway so that people can come in and pick up things like maps and guides and Smoky Bear hats or Woodsy Owl hats, and they can get directions from a visitor information specialist who draws directions on a map on the computer for people. It's really nifty. I love to talk about the frogs at Midewin National Tallgrass Prairie. This is Trevor Edmondson, who used to be with the Wetlands Initiative, and now he's with the Nature Conservancy. And I got to know him when he was with the Wetlands Initiative, and he loves frogs like I do. So I even have my frog earrings on tonight, because there are 7 different species of frogs that you might see at Midewin National Tallgrass Prairie, including American toads, bullfrogs, chorus frogs, cricket frogs, gray tree frogs, green frogs, and northern leopard frogs. And that's what Trevor is holding there. You'll see those brown spots on kind of a beige frog, and that's northern leopard. The chorus frogs are what got me really interested in frogs. When you go outside at night, usually at night, but really any time of the day or night, and you hear a sound that sounds like crickets, you know that sound, it's probably chorus frogs. They have a really neat sound that they make, and it's pretty neat to hear that. So we have all kinds of different partnership agreements with people that we're working with, like Olivet Nazarene University. We're working with them in a specialized monitoring program to look for the rusty-patched bumblebee. And we've seen the rusty-patched bumblebee a number of times. And we're looking to see if we can find more, because that's an indicator that there's healthy prairie nearby. So grassland birds are birds like I mentioned, short-eared owls and northern harriers, and also bobolinks are a big one that people come out to look for. Dick thistles. In June every year, these folks in this picture and more come out to do bird surveys at Midewin National Tallgrass Prairie, and they've been doing this for years. The Illinois Audubon Society, the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, and the Nature Conservancy. They all come out and they look every year to see how things are changing. And the sense that we're getting is that people are seeing more and more grassland birds every year. Painted buntings, one has been seen at Midewin National Tallgrass Prairie. We think it was a little off course from where it would normally be, and it stuck around for a few weeks and then it went along its way. People have seen black-billed cuckoos, wood ducks, which aren't, that uncommon, but they're still unusual. There are two nesting bald eagles, pairs. There are two nests where there are pairs that are settled in Midewin National Tallgrass Prairie. And we just had a presentation about that a few weeks ago for Save the Eagles Day. We talked about how in 2004, a pair of nesting eagles was spotted on the Calumet River, bald eagles, and that's in Chicago, the Little Calumet River. And it was the first time that bald eagles had been spotted in the area around Chicago in over 100 years in the 6 counties surrounding Chicago. So a little further east than where you folks are, but it was significant for the whole state because it was so neat to see that resurgence of numbers of seeing bald eagles come back. And now it's in the double digits how many nesting bald eagles are in the area. And sandhill cranes have been spotted in recent years. We love to see them. I saw a couple fly overhead this summer, and it was just it's always an exhilarating experience to see them. So Midewin is host site to the only interagency hotshot crew in the eastern region of the USDA Forest Service. And these crew members go out to help with the wildfires, all risk incidents throughout the United States. They're very highly trained, of course, on the use of equipment like Pulaski's, chainsaws. If you ever wanted to learn more specifically about them and meet them, that might be a nice idea for another program about the fire team. We're going to host an in-person fire outreach event on May 7th. That's the first Saturday in May at the Iron Bridge Trailhead. And we'll have the hotshots. Some of them will be with us, we hope, if they're not deployed at the time. When they're not deployed, by the way, they have assignments that they work on locally. They go out and help people with prescribed burning on other units. Like, for instance, in the past, they've helped the Indiana Dunes National Park and all sorts of different national forests in the area. So they're always very busy. We do conduct prescribed burning at Midewin National Tallgrass Prairie. It's a wonderful restoration tool. It's one of the things that we really need to do to continue to manage and maintain the prairie. I just wanted to note where did this whole program start? It started in the 1940s in Southern California, and they get their name from being in the area that's the hottest part of the fires. So, and this is a little bit more information about the prescribed fire that I mentioned a little bit about. Specifically, there are 6 things here that I included in the slide to show what prescribed burning entails, the benefits of it. It helps reduce hazardous fuels, and it minimizes the spread of plant and animal disease. It removes invasive species. It improves habitat for native species. It's actually helpful in recycling nutrients into the soil, and it provides forage. All right, I mentioned about our partnerships, and I want to mention this one for sure. I'm not going to be able to get to all of them tonight. We may be able to talk about that more on March 1st, but one that I want to make sure to highlight tonight is the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Partnership Agreement. We have a service first partnership agreement with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in the fight against Asian carp in the Great Lakes. You might have heard about this. So this is a co-location again, like we have with the Nature Conservancy, where these individuals who work for the U.S. Forest Service in the fight against Asian carp in the Great Lakes, they are co-located right with us in the office. And they look other places as well. So if you ever see a boat on the prairie parked there and you wonder, why is there a boat? That's why. So here we go. This is a neat program that I wanted to share with you all. If you come out to the Iron Bridge Trailhead, you might see these folks this year, but we're not sure yet what we're going to be able to do. Right now, this program is paused due to the pandemic, but we have a trailer where there are people that are volunteer staff this on the weekend.
Veronica, I'm losing your audio. Can you hear me? Your screen seems to be frozen. Veronica, if you can hear me, could you go out of your connection and come back in? Tell our crew to please stand by.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I'm going to bring my screen back up here. I don't know what happened there. Sorry about that. All of a sudden, we were disconnected there. Share screen. Okay, there we go. So we just want to put out those reminders again and again. Can't be overly cautious. There are some wonderful independent experiences that I want to highlight for you, and we'll talk about these in more detail next week. Can everybody hear me okay and see the slides? Yeah?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. This is a picture of Michael Cardis. He's one of the photography instructors in the At Ease Nature Platoon. This is a program that Brushwood Center at Ryerson Woods created and produces, and they bring people out to the prairie. It's for U.S. military veterans and their families. And they can come out and get a go kit of, everything from guides and birding guides, and there are also online tutorials. Michael teaches some of the classes. They're virtual and sometimes they're in person. We had a group out in October and they all went inside a bunker and had a wonderful experience. So if you are a military veteran or a family member, please let me know, because we'd love to connect you if you're interested in this program. The photos are featured in a date planner. It's like a calendar, and they are beautiful photos of the prairie. They're also featured in different displays. So if you know of a community center that would like to display photos of Midewin National Tallgrass Prairie taken by U.S. military veterans through this program, let me know. We can arrange for those photos to be on loan for your display. Some online resources. I mentioned the self-guided tours. We have trail maps online in English and Spanish. There are fact sheets. If you do a quick Google search of Midewin bison fact sheets or just Midewin fact sheets, they'll all come up. And as I mentioned, the self-guided tours through the prairie farmsteads. There are several different at-home resources for learning about conservation and natural resources, including webinars like the one we're going to have tomorrow night, and also the date planner that I mentioned. We do a lot of Facebook Live presentations, especially from prairie gardens, where people talk about the different things that they've experienced in their prairie gardening and how they've made their prairie gardens successful. We really like to try to be a resource for folks who want to start a prairie garden either at their home or if they want to start a community garden, something like that. These are some links to our website and Facebook and Twitter. And then here's my email address and my phone number. And I encourage you to reach out to me if you have any questions or comments, and I can take a few questions now.
Okay. My head is just spinning, Veronica, because I have all these wonderful ideas and I can't wait to talk to you tomorrow. However, tonight, let's just focus on your presentation. Can you give me, a kind of a backward look before those farms took over where the Tallgrass Prairie was and cropland was created? At what point, I mean, do we go back to the Northwest Territory when Illinois was parceled out? At what point did it stop being prairie and start being farmland?
Oh, good question, Donna. That's a good point to bring up. It always was. Prairie was always interwoven into all of these historical time periods, all these periods in time. There were always little pieces of it. And our archaeologist, Joe Wheeler, has a much more detailed answer than that.
Okay,
So,
and we'll be following up.
Good.
And I saw that you were just talking about community gardens. So that would be, could this be people who have pollinator type plants, wildflowers that are specific to our area in Illinois that could be planted? Is that what we're talking about?
yes, and I'm glad we're talking now because I missed the point that I wanted to make, that the monarch butterflies and other pollinators, they need natural habitat. They need native prairie plants, like the ones I showed here tonight. And so even if you have just a little patch of grass at the library or an area nearby, a group of people could get together and start planting that area with native prairie plants, and it would be a wonderful pollinator garden.
I feel like you're my straight man on this, but the library, we haven't announced this officially yet, so nobody tell. But we just received a pollinator grant, and we will be having hopefully lots of people. We are getting, I think it's a minimum of 2,000 seed packets of seeds that are specific to our region.
Wonderful.
And we are ecstatic, and we need to talk. So, and I want everybody who's on with us tonight, who is in the Illinois region, to think about participating with us. We'll be announcing this very shortly.
Well, that's fantastic. Congratulations.
So
there's a good starter kit on our website, and it's the bottom right corner. There's a spotlight where you can go through there to get to the web pages to see all the different tips and facts that specialists share from the restoration areas that might be helpful there. And we're always, a phone call away if you have questions and whatnot.
Very exciting. I understand that there is associated with Route 66, an area that has been planted that attracts migrating butterflies, monarchs.
Yes, the Illinois Route 60, or it's not the Illinois, it's the Route 66 Monarch Flyway.
And now, does that tie into your property at Midewin?
It definitely does. And Midewin is one of the largest locations along that route. The monarchs take the same route as Route 66, believe it or not. And so much of our highway system is the outgrowth of those many years ago, when they were established initially. And a lot of it was based on the way different species migrated.
It's just really an amazing thing. Birds, butterflies. I don't want to hold up your time or our audience. Do we have any questions in the chat? No, see, everyone's been paying too close attention. What will we be covering next time on March 1st for part 2 of this wonderful program?
The history. I think we should talk more about the history. And for sure, are there other topics that this group would like me to cover in addition to the history?
If anyone wants to dash something off in the chat or follow up here with us at the library, send us an email and we will make sure we get that information off to Veronica so that that information can be included in the next program. I myself cannot wait to come out. We have some plans to visit and
Good.
I hope this has piqued everyone's interest too. This is so close to us here in LaSalle, in the LaSalle area. And I know we have people from across the state on with us tonight and beyond. So this is a unique treasure. And even if you have to go a little ways to get to it, I think it would be well worth the travel. So with that, I will say that I don't want to hold up Veronica here tonight. This has been lovely. I can't wait for the next one. I can't wait to talk to you tomorrow, Veronica, about so many other things. And I'd like to turn it back over to you. Do you have any closing comments?
Well, I just think that based on the plans you've got for the prairie planting, maybe we better spend 15 or 20 minutes going over some prairie planting information on March 1st. If that would
could
be okay
fun,
with
too.
everybody. Yeah. And also more history.
Yes, I'm interested to know how this beautiful natural place turned into an arsenal. So that's part of the things on my agenda. So, all right then. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you all of our audience for joining us. Again, we apologize for the delay. Things happen, crazy weather out there. So we will see you for our next program, hopefully on the 5th with Father Dominic, and everyone stay safe tonight and stay warm, and we'll see you soon. Thank you, everyone. Good night.